Welcome, everyone. Welcome. We're live, I think. I hope that we are officially live. Everything looks pretty good on our end. We usually wait just a few minutes right here in the beginning just so people can get in here. Maybe we can get a little feedback on audio, video, make sure everybody can hear us and see us okay. And I do want to put a little disclaimer out. My window is open because my office is 5 billion degrees. It's almost the surface of the sun up here. But I live on a very busy street corner. So if there's too much road noise, if it gets too loud, you might hear the occasional truck come through or motorcycle. But please let me know. I will close my window if it gets to be too much for everybody. But otherwise, thank you guys for being here. Alex, how are you today?
Doing all right. It's, as you stated, it's a warm spring day, a little warmer than I was expecting. But it's spring nonetheless. I mean, I'm even further north than you are, so
yeah,
it's it was nice and cool spring days, and then all of a sudden it's like 80 degrees. So
yeah, we went. I mean, we basically have the same temperature. Almost the same weather. Maybe not the same weather, rain and things like that wise, but temp wise, we're probably pretty close. But yeah, it was like we went from like this rainy, like 50, 60 degree weather to just like 2 weeks of hot. And then just the other day it was like 85. And I was just like, I was not ready for this. Like I'm ready for it. I want it, but I just wasn't ready for it to just be like, boom, here's 80 degrees and sun. But it's been good. It's been good. It's so much better. I'm one of those people, I would much rather work when it's hot and sunny out than work when it's cold, rainy, snowy, any of those things. Like I'd much rather sweat than freeze. That's me. I know other people who are like, no, bro, I only want to work when it's 40 degrees out. But me, no. I'm 165 pounds, 5'10". Just let me sweat. I'm good. I'm not built for the cold. I don't have a whole lot of extra insulation for the cold. I don't deal with the cold very well. So it's summer, it's hot. Give it to me. I'm here for it.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily tempered for the cold, I never really have been. I've just been progressively moving north my whole life. So
You'd think that you were like trying to move into the cold.
Yeah, that's just how things are working out. But yeah, you were talking earlier. I know it's raining down there, but
it actually just stopped.
I'm so far north, I can't really remember the last time I experienced a decent thunderstorm, like window rattling, house shaking thunderstorm. I probably back when I lived in Lancaster, I don't know, New Jersey's gotten some weird weather, but up here it's like these people don't know what a thunderstorm is.
Yeah, that's sad. We get all sorts of weird weather here because I live so close to the lakes. I live right near Ontario and Erie. We're kind of like right there. I'm close to kind of that nook of New York over there. And yeah, we're supposed to get thunderstorms tomorrow, and I'm just really excited. It's supposed to be a little bit cooler, rain, thunderstorms. I just want to like go out on the porch with a cup of coffee and like a nice vape and just hang out and listen to the rain and the thunder. That's my plans tomorrow. This is what adulting is, right? Like, yeah. You're just like this. I'm so excited to just sit on my porch and listen to the rain.
That's what you do on a Sunday as an adult.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Is it still race season? Are they still racing? Oh, okay. Yeah, so tomorrow is a race day?
Today's a race day. They just had the truck series, and they're doing the I don't know if it's like, is it the Xfinity series? It used to be the Busch series, but yeah. So they're racing at the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas today and tomorrow. It's a road course.
Do you watch a lot of the truck stuff as well? Is that something you're?
I always manage to miss it. It's the truck racing is kind of exciting because the vehicles are weighted, balanced differently. The mistakes tend to be a little bit more exciting. But yeah, the only series that I actually try to make time for is the Sprint. Oh God, it's the Cup Series. I can't even remember who the main sponsor is of whatever, but it's the Cup Series stuff.
Oh, okay. So, yeah. I mean, you're basically speaking, German to me right now. I I have no idea, but that sounds really exciting, and I hope that everybody makes excellent, safe left-hand turns. That's what I hope.
Well, there's right-hand turns involved in this too. I think the road
accidents
courses
are bound to happen. Everything's gonna go off the rails.
Yeah, no, it's a road course, and they race no matter what. So they've got windshield wipers and rain tires and all that.
I feel like if I were to get into any kind of racing, it would be like rally car stuff, like dirt track and stuff like that. I think I could get into that. I just can't do like regular oval NASCAR. It's something I've my mom's ex-husband, just NASCAR. Love NASCAR. Big Earnhardt fan. NASCAR every Sunday. And for me, it was like I would try, but I would inevitably end up just taking a nap. So would he, and so does every other NASCAR guy that I've ever met in my life. For like the first 150 laps, it's nap time, and then after that, you watch the end.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. But anyway, I think we've given folks enough time to show up.
Yeah, I think so. I think we can get off of weather and NASCAR now.
Abruptly shift gears and quickly get into the legislative rundown.
Ooh, shifting gears. I like what you did there.
We're going to quickly shift gears, and we're going to quickly breeze through this particular gear because we only got a couple things to talk about. So I'll fire that up, and we'll move right along here.
I will give you the floor. Take it away, man. What do we got going on this week?
Well, here we go. Boom. So in the legislative rundown, and I'm going to do this again just because I think it's a useful way to share all of this stuff. How do we get to the calls to action that we put up? We'll start with Maine. Maine has a flavor ban that is moving, but the history page and everything that you find on the state's website kind of ends here at the result of the committee hearing, which was they issued a divided report, which means kind of some people agree, some people don't. Make of that what you will. Ultimately, this is moving on to a vote by the full House. So our engagement is up and is set to send messages to members of the House of Representatives, your representative in the Maine legislature. So please, if you live in Maine, please keep the pressure up, keep the messages coming, and let lawmakers know that it would be a huge mistake to ban flavored vapor products. And this is, of course, another, this is a pre-written letter, and encourage everybody to add your story. The things that we've put in our message is very important, but personalizing this and adding your experience is very, very important. So I
always like to highlight when you add your story, excuse me, everybody, when you do add your story and you customize that message, put it above just the CASA message itself, put it in at the like before that message. You can leave the CASA message right in there, but a lot of people just click and send that message, and what happens is it kind of becomes, I don't want to call it spam, but when people receive emails and it's the same message repeatedly, a lot of times that'll kind of automate it, just end up into a spam folder or something like that. So it's much better if you really want them to see it and get it and not end up in a spam folder, put your message right there. It absolutely helps that filter process for representatives when they're getting emails.
Yeah. So
I just know that some people might include it in the bottom or somewhere in between. I just wanted to highlight that. It's definitely best to put it first and foremost.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of people do that, and putting it right at the top really is kind of the best place for it. If you try to wedge it in between the paragraphs that we've written, it might feel a little out of place or whatever, but it's certainly a good idea to put that at the very beginning. And that is, that first paragraph is really going to be the most important for them, and it's vital that they know that this message is coming from a real constituent who really uses these products and has experienced some success here. So let's go right along back to the clicky map, and just wanted to remind folks about what's going on in Arizona.
Ooh, pull up your clicky map.
Oh, I didn't even share my screen. Well, I'm already here, so Arizona, there is a bill, HB 2682. This is essentially reasonable licensing and regulation for the industry in Arizona. This is a bill that the industry worked on and has been a part of. We got some very angry responses. I don't know if we talked about this last week, but there were a few people that I don't think really understood that, I think there are a lot of people out there, when they hear the word regulation, they think of all of the other horrible things that the industry and consumers are experiencing at the hands of the FDA and various states, and all the things that Matt Myers and the Body Parts are lobbying for. But there is, of course, sensible regulation that people in the industry and consumers like us can benefit from. It legitimizes the industry. It shows that there are responsible adults running the industry, and that people are willing to work together to make sure that they are making good products that actually protect people like me and you who buy these products. So there is such a thing as good regulation, and this is, to some extent, an example of that. And so it's a good thing for people in Arizona to support this. So if you live in Arizona, take action. Again, add your story at the beginning here and send a message to your member of the Arizona House of Representatives, HB 2682. And yeah, this is kind of a long history, so I did sort of punt on this one and just link to the Arizona legislature page, and you can search around here and see all of the stuff that's happened. And if you want to get into some detail, I think you can see, of course, the votes and any other things that have been submitted,
all the revisions, and
all the fun stuff. So with that, that's the legislative rundown for the week. I did, Kristen noted there's someone was asking about what people can do in Massachusetts to reverse the flavor ban. It is, as we always say, it is always a good time to reach out to your lawmakers and share your opinions about particular policies. At the moment, there is no piece of legislation or any lawsuits or anything like that moving in Massachusetts that would undo the flavor ban. And to be perfectly honest with everyone, this is something where the industry is going to have to get involved. The industry is capable of ponying up the lobbying dollars, and it's going to need to be with a lot of assistance, at the very least, from the industry to get a bill introduced that would, at the very least, amend Massachusetts law to allow for the sales of flavored products that have gone through PMTA.
I was just gonna ask if just your personal opinion, if it would probably be more likely that Mass might be able to get something like that through, as opposed to a full reversal.
I think
New York, our state, right, is still the only state that has a flavor ban that has that component to it, that products that do receive PMTA approvals can re-enter the market.
Yeah, it's at the moment, and ideally, I mean, it's still not ideal, but the better version of that, of what we have here in New York, is allowing for products to be sold that have been which applications have been accepted for substantive review. And this is the federal standard. Basically, if you submit your application and the agency accepts it, you are granted a 1-year period to continue selling your products while the agency reviews your application. And so I know that has been proposed in other states. Nothing that I'm aware of has passed yet. But that is preferable language, and it does conform to the federal standard. So any state that's either looking to reverse a flavor ban or negotiate on a flavor ban, that is likely to be the best option for them.
Yeah.
So I think Massachusetts is serving as this massive case study, right? And showing what the consequences of these bans are. And there's already research out about this. I don't have the link queued up. I may have it in a different document here, but there was a study that came out that really focused on the sort of the effect of the tax in Massachusetts. So, the timeline is they banned all the flavors. Well, they banned the flavors because of the lung injuries, and then allowed, of course, the cannabis industry to start selling the cartridges again, before allowing vapor products to come back on the market, flavored vapor products. And then the ban actually was passed through the legislature, and at the same time, Massachusetts imposed a 75% excise tax on the vapor products left on the market. So, excuse me, there has been some research, and I, again, apologize, I don't have that link handy, but Dr. Michael Siegel is part of this research. He lives in Massachusetts and works in Massachusetts. And so I believe the conclusions of that research were that essentially the ban and the tax haven't actually reduced smoking prevalence, and in fact have contributed to people going back to smoking who were previously using vapor products successfully to stay away from combustible tobacco. So that little bit here, and I know I'm tapping Kristen to maybe look that study up and drop the link in chat. And I wish I had the title. I've been researching and writing like multiple things. I've got things open in all kinds of places, and I don't want to do a bunch of.
Yeah, we can see all your tabs.
Yeah, well, no, those are my shortcuts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, it's again, it's something that I think people who live in Massachusetts can keep this issue in the forefront of lawmakers' minds, and reminding them that the current policy is a disaster, and there are one or two pieces of research. Certainly, several articles have been written about studies showing the decline in sales in Massachusetts that just sort of migrated to neighboring states, so New Hampshire, Connecticut, and so those are all points to bring up and continue to remind lawmakers of the consequences. But I think the most direct question is, no, there is no organized campaign at the moment to overturn the law in Massachusetts. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen, but
Kristen's question up here on the screen is, if enough consumers contact lawmakers in Massachusetts and tell how the flavor ban has negatively impacted them, and maybe request they put together a bill reversing the ban, would that possibly have any effect?
It might soften the ground for when an actual lobbyist shows up and says, here's a piece of legislation you could run. So it's valuable. I just kind of want to measure people's expectations here and say that there's no silver bullet to this. It's going to be a group effort. There's going to be a lot of collaboration and certainly some money involved with fixing this. And that's true for just about every state.
And like we always say, it is literally always a good time to contact your reps.
Yeah.
So folks in Massachusetts, get right on there. And if you don't know where or how to contact your representatives, I'm sure that Alex right now on CASAT.org can show you. He can pull up, he can share his screen again here and pull up our handy dandy legislator lookup.
I'll walk you through it and I'll talk you through it. If you go to our website and hover over the Get Involved tab, you'll see the third item down is the legislator lookup. And boom, there you go. Street, zip code, and they'll find who you are. Or they'll find who represents you. Sorry.
Yeah, that's handy. I've used it multiple times.
Yeah, that's it. We're not asking for your phone number or your social security number or anything crazy like that. Just address and zip code, and it doesn't even have to be yours. It just whoever lives at that address, you'll figure out who
Yeah,
represents.
you could type in your neighbor's address if you don't want to type in your own.
Yeah, we don't collect anything off of this form, so this is a free resource that, and that's it. So
yep, it's always a good time to contact your reps.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I believe Kristen did find the link to that study that you were referring to and dropped it in chat as well.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Kristen.
I'm just double checking. Yeah, effects of Massachusetts Bill number 4196 on electronic cigarette use, a mixed method study. I'm not going to read names that I can't pronounce on air. So, but the authors there, Amanda Kachmar, Adrian Gunawan, and Michael.
Oh, you said you.
I just did. I had to. It's good practice. So yeah, definitely encourage people to look this over. Oh wait, I can. If you don't believe me, there's the study.
There it is.
There we go. There we go. So yeah, check it out. Just one of a few early resources available to talk about what's going on in Massachusetts. So with that, I think we've covered the legislative rundown, and we can get into the fun discussion part.
Fun, awesome. I don't know, Alex. Is less legislative news good news?
Yeah, it's to be expected as we move through sessions. Things quiet down. There's crossover, and then some states like Maine, I believe Maine is going into a special session, and so yeah, it's fluid. I'm
one of those people, like, I get nervous when things calm down. You know what I mean? I'm so used to in this space in tobacco harm reduction and vaping, there's always something happening legislatively. It feels like it's especially in the last like 2-3 years or so, it's just been kind of a constant thing. Whenever we get these lulls, I'm like, oh, it's the calm before the storm. Everybody kind of starts to relax a little bit, but I'm over here like on the edge of my seat. Like, what are we going to do now?
Yeah, it's
I just like I anticipate it. Whenever we get the lulls, I'm like, oh boy,
Yeah, it's a lot of kind of bracing for the next horrible campaign or
Yep. Yeah, bracing for the next round of brainworm commercials and things like that. Yeah.
Well, it's not all quiet on the Western Front here. Next weekend we have a couple of important dates coming up.
We do.
So on Sunday, the 31st, is World No Tobacco Day, and I'm actually supposed
Monday is the 31st.
My bad. Monday is the 31st. Monday is the 31st, and that is World No Tobacco Day, which is an international celebration of abstinence-only messaging about smoking. So if that's your thing, then the World No Tobacco Day is just for you. But the day before World No Tobacco Day is World Vape Day, which is a relatively new thing generated by the community. This is not a marketing campaign that was built by cigarette companies. This is something that vapers, advocates around the world like you and me decided we needed to have a vape day. And so World Vape Day is all about spreading awareness and the good news about the fact that you don't have to smoke anymore, and you're not pigeonholed into choosing a few products that maybe don't work for you. So try vaping. So be on the lookout for all of that stuff. Obviously, I think it's a good thing for the community to suggest to the world that there are certainly more options available, products that you might enjoy more. To me, that's a lot more inviting and inclusive message than "don't smoke" or "you're a loser," which is exactly the line that the World Health Organization has chosen this year. Exactly.
Well, that's what they're implying, because I think their actual verbiage was something like "quitters or winners" or something like that. So, if you smoke, according to the World Health Organization, you are a loser.
It's not just smoking; it's all tobacco.
Tobacco.
If you use tobacco in any form, according to the World Health Organization, you're a loser. So,
And I believe they also believe that all nicotine products are tobacco products. So anyone using nicotine, according to the World Health Organization, you're a loser.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's fantastic messaging from a World Health Organization, you know, an organization that claims that stigmatizing people is bad and things like this. And those are their core beliefs. Yet here we are calling people who use nicotine losers.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just for something completely different, we highlighted some research that was recently published about teen vaping. I think you might have read this a little bit more closely than me. I get the gist here, but what are your thoughts on this research?
So essentially, what they looked at with 12th graders is like predeterminants for smoking, income, social things, whether their parents smoke, whether there's generational smoking involved. So there's a lot of kind of predeterminants to, you know, is this person likely to smoke? Is this young person likely to start smoking? And what they found was that a lot of these, the vast majority of these high schoolers who were using e-cigarettes fit those kind of predeterminants for young people who otherwise were likely to start smoking had they not started using an e-cigarette.
And this is directly counter to the narrative that we've heard from a lot of the parents groups and of course all of the other activists involved in this debate. A lot of them continue to say that most of the kids who are vaping never would have picked up nicotine to begin with.
Sure. Yeah, this is which is just kind of this, that's just this like made up narrative to support their, you know, their narrative. When you look at the smoking rates that are down, especially in youth right now, 12th graders, 11th graders, smoking rates have plummeted. I believe we're under 5% for young people in this country right now, which is amazing. And then we look at the experimental usage and things like this, kind of still above that with e-cigarettes. And really what we're seeing is a transition. I think there's a lot of experimental use, but right here, this study is showing us that a lot of these young people who would have otherwise been very likely to start smoking instead are using e-cigarettes. So this is more evidence for population level harm reduction. And I know that a lot of people feel certain ways about youth using vapor products or whatever it may be. And I agree. A, first and foremost, it's illegal. And B, I agree. I don't necessarily believe that all young people should be using nicotine and every 12th grader should be using an e-cigarette. But I would personally much rather see youth using much less harmful forms of nicotine than smoking and going on to smoke for the rest of their lives. So this is a good study just kind of highlighting that, yeah, these youth who would have been otherwise smoking have chosen to use e-cigarettes.
And I did want to, if people want to read some commentary on this and some more analysis, Alex Norsha has, of course, written an article about it for Filter. And the one quote I wanted to pull out here was from Clive Bates, highlighting the two bits of good news I think we touched on. But the first is that young smokers will be diverted into vaping and probably spared a life of smoking. The second is that most of the vaping among kids who never would have been smokers will be pretty transient and likely not persist after a period of experimentation. And this is consistent with other data showing that, I don't have the book handy with me, and I forget the author's name, but this is consistent with data showing that young people have something like an 87% chance of just outgrowing nicotine use.
Sure.
And of course, cigarettes being the most popular at the time of this research, of being the most popular form of nicotine delivery. That's pretty impressive, considering all of the scary talk we've heard about how nicotine is the most addictive substance on the planet. 87% of young people just outgrowing it, to me, doesn't sound like the most addictive thing on the planet. I mean, according or compared to like heroin and I think cocaine. So heroin, your chances of outgrowing heroin use as a teenager are like 93 or 90 something percent, and cocaine also in that 90 something percent.
Which highlights that the vast majority of people, even young people who do use drugs or experiment with drugs, do not go on to a lifetime of addiction and problematic use and things like this.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this also has to do with access.
Sure.
You know, it just being. I mean, especially. Well, I'm sure. I assume young people. If I'm just going back to my teenage years, you know, young people may actually have more access to these things than adults do, and certainly there is that level of almost consequence-free access. So I think that may drive things. But as you get older, of course, the crimes become the penalties become more severe, and you know, you've got to pay with your own money. That to me sort of explains maybe one factor that you know, leads to young people not using cocaine or heroin beyond graduation. But cigarettes remain the most accessible form of nicotine delivery in the world. So to me, that explains a bit more of why your chances of outgrowing cigarettes are less. Part of that has to do with this whole normalization of smoking and the fact that most people, you know, using a cigarette or nicotine generally doesn't cause the same kind of it doesn't have the same effect on motor skills, right? You can smoke a cigarette and operate heavy machinery, depending on your company's policies.
I don't know if you've ever read Jacob Greer's this book.
I did.
But he talks about that a little bit, about one of the appealing things of cigarettes and why so many people at one point, you know, we saw like 50% of all men in this country at one point smoked, is because it was a drug that you could take at any time. You could smoke and do anything. You know, it wasn't intoxicating. It didn't inebriate you. You could smoke while you were doing housework or while you were driving or while you were, you know, tending your lawn or while you were doing dishes or working, whatever it was. And that was one of the biggest appealing factors, as opposed to, you know, a lot of other substances which are intoxicating and things like that. Excellent book, by the way, for anybody out there. That's a great book.
Yeah, definitely.
But you mentioned that, and that's one of the things he talks about, you know, is because, yeah, I mean, I can't think of something back when I smoked. I can't think of something that I had ever done that I didn't do while also smoking. Like everything I did while smoking, you know, name it. I did it while I smoked. You don't need to go down that list, but I definitely did it while I smoked.
Yeah. I mean, I used to know the distance between 2 points based on how many cigarettes I could smoke.
Cigarettes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, you know, this is good news, an encouraging start to, you know, I think understanding better how young people are using the products, why young people are using the products, and what potential benefits there might be. Certainly absolutely no one, not even, you know, Kasa is out here suggesting we should be promoting these products to young people. But I think at the very least, we can turn the temperature down on the conversation and acknowledge that this is better than just kids smoking cigarettes.
It's amazing that people can't separate that message. Like when I sit here and I say, I would much rather see a teenager vaping than smoking, people hear, Logan wants to see teenagers vaping.
Yeah.
And those are two completely separate messages. No, I'm not promoting, and Kasa, none of us, no vapor that I know, person who vapes, is saying, yes, teenagers, go vape, you know, encouraging it. But if you just want to talk about the harms that come from those two products, I would much rather see teenagers using a safer form of nicotine as opposed to smoking cigarettes.
You know, and there's some research backing up what I'm about to say. If there's a message to young people to get out, it's save your money and spend it on something better. So save your money and spend it on your retirement fund. I know you're 16 years old. You can't imagine what life is going to be like when you're 65. It doesn't matter. There are way more tools available to teenagers these days to learn about finance, manage finance, get into investing. All of these things are a better use of your money than buying a pack of cigarettes or buying a vapor product. It's wait until you get older and you learn more about drugs, learn how to use drugs, and learn how to balance it with your professional life and your financial life. I think, Vermont actually has, it's 808 Quits. Vermont has a really good ad right now. It's a guy, obviously blue collar worker in a yellow vest, sitting down at his couch, going through his bills, and he delivers the message of, if I look at how much money I'm spending on cigarettes and how much money I need to pay my expenses, cigarettes just aren't worth it. It's just that economic consideration alone motivates many people to stop smoking. That's why we have all this data about raising taxes encourages a certain percentage of people to quit smoking. I think, we can follow that up by, I think reinforcing people's, existing thoughts about buying cigarettes. I think, I'm sure most of my cigarette purchasing was just habitual, right? I would walk in and out of a convenience store and not really, it was just automatic, right? But there are those times, of course, where what you've got in your bank account, it's going to cost you $10, $15, $20, depending on where you live, to buy 2 packs of cigarettes. You've got to do that calculation in your head and say, is it really worth it? The answer is always going to be not really. And so if you're a young person and you've got to figure out where you're going to spend $10, $15, $20, you can find much better things to spend your money on than nicotine.
Yeah, and that's also kind of, it ties into, I mean, we're getting to a place now with all these major taxes on alternatives like vapor products, but that's always been one of those things, right? Like, people who smoke are money sensitive. They're conscious of their money and how much money they're spending on it. And when you have vapor products that are not only safer, but also more affordable, more cost efficient for people, that's a big deal. And you say, look, hey, like for me, right? Like, I would, like, my cigarette money was a bill. That was one of my expenditures. It was like gas, electric, rent, cigarettes, like that. It was in that hierarchy of my bills. And so I was always, I don't know, kind of thinking about that and like working it into my budget. And then when I started vaping, I was able to go, oh, look at all that money that I was able to save. And I didn't have to torture myself and go through all this headache trying to quit smoking with products that didn't work for me in the past, or trying to quit cold turkey or whatever. I was able to save money and switch and get healthier.
Yeah. So all of that having been said, relatively good news, and certainly this record below 5% smoking among young people is something to be celebrated. So,
Alex, I'm gonna let you take a crack at this question from Andrew. Do you see a federal ban on flavored disposables coming soon?
I think. Well, hi Andrew, good to see you. Andrew, New York State Vapor Association, another New Yorker. I mean, the ban is already effective, right? I mean, this is something that was passed not really passed, but enacted. Was it 2017, 2018? Forgive me on I've been operating for at least more than a year on the knowledge that the federal government stepped in and
they imposed a flavor ban on closed systems, right?
Closed systems, yeah.
And that would also be a disposable. And then two, there's always this like, this is a loophole. It's a loophole, but these products are post 8/8/2016 to begin with.
Right. Yeah. So forgive me. I totally screwed that up. It's that there is that distinction between pod systems and disposables. So yeah, like you said, they're already prohibited.
They're already prohibited.
They were introduced to the market following August 8th, 2016. They're already banned. So I know that people are still selling them. I know that China is still shipping them, but it's at your own risk.
But yeah, they are not authorized for sale. Any product post August 8th, 2016 is technically, I mean, unless you've got a PMTA in and you've got the 1-year exemption and all of that. But
depending on what
these disposables, I don't even know what ones are around anymore, puff bars and whatnot. And PAVE and tobacco-free kids and all of them were running around for a long time yelling loophole, 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 because in that initial, closed pod system ban, the flavor ban that happened, they were kind of left out of that. But that is, again, because they were already prohibited because of the deeming regs. And so it's like, these organizations were claiming loophole, but it's like, how do you make an illegal product more illegal? There's no loophole. How does that work? Yeah, they're essentially already prohibited. But you're right. I mean, they do get sold all over the place.
I think, part of what maybe is driving this conversation is this sort of renewed messaging about, well, maybe it's not renewed, but it was certainly, I think, to some extent predictable. When the flavored pod systems were taken off the market, young people first gravitated to mint, and then as access to pod systems became increasingly more difficult, they gravitated towards disposables that were just being sold without authorization, and like you said, there was no loophole. They weren't really allowed on the market to begin with. But again, this is sort of one of those things where the language around this particular topic is all geared toward frightening parents, frightening school officials, and frightening young people. I don't want to see disposable products go away. We can have conversations about litter and the environmental footprint and all of that, but
the only thing I want to see is the word disposable be changed to recyclable. Can we call it a recyclable vape?
Yeah,
because that idea, like disposable, just throw it away when you're done. They do contain lithium cells. There are batteries inside those. Please don't just throw them in the garbage. There's a huge problem at landfills and waste management places and things like this with batteries and explosions, especially when trash compactors smush a whole bunch of those under a lot of pressure. There are a lot of problems. So I would love to see a little better way that we dispose of them and just stop calling them disposables. I think it gives people the impression that they can just simply throw them in the trash.
One of the problems with the regulations is a very important conversation that we should all have, consumers, industry, regulators alike, is how can the industry do a better job of capturing these finished disposable or recyclable products? It really, we can't have the open conversation in the United States. We can't have an open conversation about that right now because the regulations prohibit the sale of those products unless they were on the market prior to August 8th, 2016. And there were, of course, Enjoy had the disposable Cigalikes, or a lot of Cigalike products on the market. Those are the first products that I bought, and then quickly figured out that they weren't going to work for me, and I had to move to something more powerful. But yeah, I mean, it's like everything else. Once the stigma and the pressure is taken off, we can have constructive conversations about the ways that industry can step in. Single use, that's a good one. Thank you, Mog.
One puff, that's all you get off it. Single use, then you're done.
No, but so yeah,
it's better than disposable, though. I'll give you that. I think I think we could even improve upon that language, but it's definitely better than disposable. It's something that has irked me since disposables like kind of grew, since that whole area of vaping kind of grew. It's just one thing where I'm like, we're just telling people that these are, throwawayable, like, and it's not good. There's a lot of problems that come about from that. And I think that we can do better. 1:45-minute too. That's a breeze stuff. That's perfect. Yeah.
1:45-minute drive.
Just straight. Yeah. Just, you're basically, I don't know. I could go into a whole thing on why you shouldn't take a 45-minute toot, but that's okay. Yeah, I think that we can do a better job with verbiage. I think that we can probably always do a better job with verbiage in a lot of areas, but there's definitely a lot of problems as far as the handling and recycling and disposing of closed disposable systems like that, for sure. And you're right, we can't really even have a full conversation about that because they're essentially prohibited anyway. Yeah. I mean, like, oh, what do you mean we have to do something about this product that is illegal? What do you mean?
I'm sure you can find somebody, but you know what knowledgeable industry person is going to get up in front of a seminar and say, well, we've been running this pilot program in the United States for 6 months about how to bring back these single-use vapor products. Nobody. I don't. Well, somebody will. Somebody could, but I imagine that there's a lot of reasons to not openly admit that you are doing something against the law. So
right. You would need like an environmental group or something that has no ties to industry to talk about this problem.
I don't want that either.
But then at that point, you're trying to create a solution, I guess, to something again that's illegal. Yeah. Like, where does it go? Yeah.
I'm going to shut that down immediately. When groups start talking about this issue, it will be with the flavor of Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids.
Yeah.
And
no, you're right.
Everybody kind of stops at, well, it's already prohibited, so ban it harder.
Yeah.
So yeah, and to Kristen's point here, any good propaganda is peppered with truth. So the truth part here is that the federal ban on flavored pod systems didn't include the words disposable or single-use products, but it specifically didn't target them because those products are already prohibited.
Because it didn't need to, right?
Yeah, but that is that little tiny grain of pepper in there. So, Australia is a mess. Breeze tones. I can't say I'm intimately knowledgeable of everything that's going on in Australia, but the nicotine by prescription is ridiculous. Of course, you can buy all the nicotine you want in cigarettes.
Yeah, as long as you buy deadly, cancer-causing nicotine-containing products like cigarettes, go for it. Knock yourself out, Australia. You can buy smoke up. But you want to use a safer nicotine, non-cancer-causing product, you're gonna have to get a prescription for that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So
atrocious.
One more thing, I think, before we get to wrapping all this up, is the e-cigarette summit is coming up this coming week. I mentioned this last weekend, but a point that someone made on Twitter, DR stands for. There's nothing else after that. It's just DR stands
Doctor
for.
stands for.
Doctor.
I don't know. I guess that's what I'm assuming.
Sounds like it could be a Van Halen song, but
yeah, perfect.
The very, very important question here is, will there be anybody speaking on behalf of consumers at the e-cigarette summit? I have spoken there. I was a keynote speaker a couple of years ago. We've had other CASA board members participate in panels, and that's kind of the extent of CASA's invitations to speak at this. This year, of course, we were asked if there were certain consumers that would like a free pass, and the implication there is that consumer participation can be through Q&A sessions and, of course, any networking stuff that happens. I'm not quite sure what the platform is that they're using this year. I know that GTNF had a very good conference platform, and you could go and sit at sort of a virtual table with a bunch of people and have that networking session, as awkward as it is on a what is essentially a Zoom call. But it was fun. It was useful. I found myself up till 3 o'clock in the morning speaking with someone and
partying real hard.
Just talking. It was a great conversation.
That's essentially how I party now. I just talk. I just talk real hard.
But so the answer to this tweet is not really. There is no consumer panel. There's no consumer keynote being given at eSig Summit. And part of having had a conversation with the organizers, I understand their point to a degree, which is if you want to put a consumer speaker on there, then who are you going to bump? This is a 2-day e-cigarette summit, by the way. Usually they just try to cram all this into one day. And there really is a lot of valuable content going on here, I think. And so the question really does become then, whose presentation should we bump. And there's a lot of people speaking at this who I would love to hear from. And of course, Cliff Douglas is the one who's provided a response to this question. And of course, his presentation is going to be partly or all about how consumers need to be listened to. We are the ones experiencing not only the product, but the regulations and policies that affect our access to these products and help or hinder our ability to move away from combustion.
So even though we don't necessarily have a seat at the table, we have Cliff Douglas who is advocating for us to have a seat at the table.
To some extent, I think. And generally, I am interested in, I think another way to maybe look at this, I know people cannot read the text that's scrolling by. This is the agenda for the e-cigarette summit. It's longer than normal because it is 2 days long. Look at all of that text. So you can check this out.
Just look at it.
Cliff linked to it in his tweet. And certainly I think maybe Kristen can drop the link to the agenda. The videos for this will be available shortly. I don't know if shortly is the best way to say it, but the videos from e-cigarette summit are typically made available within a month or so. So yeah, that's that. It's worth it. And I think the one way to look at this is more like being someone on a jury. We are the ones who are judging the quality of the presentations that are happening at e-cigarette summit. Yes, it is a lot of people speaking to and perhaps with their colleagues in the audience or on the panels, but they're talking about us. And so we're the ones that really do have to, I think, look at this very closely and think critically about what they're saying about us. And if you are, no one took me up on the offer for free tickets. But for those of us who are going to be attending, we do have those opportunities to ask questions, challenge things that are being said. For the most part, there have been some folks who have spoken at e-cigarette summit in the past who were very deserving of snickers and booze that actually didn't happen. But for the most part, I think we have a good lineup of people who really do want to approach this critically and not just with the mindset of creating a bunch of bumper stickers to scare people away from smoking or nicotine generally. So I would encourage anybody who does attend or watches this or comments on it later. We don't have the power to guide the agenda at this meeting, but we have the power to interpret it and make decisions on our own. And so definitely check out the materials as they come out, and there will be plenty of live tweeting from the event, I'm sure. The familiar faces, Gregory Conley, Lindsay Stroud, and other folks in the industry and in advocacy. All of these Twitter accounts are great to follow, and we'll probably have up to the minute commentary as the event happens. So
these events always happen while I'm at work.
That's the
one downside for me, because I've always wanted to attend or be at least, in some kind of Q&A or things like that. But they're always at like 1, 2 in the afternoon on like a Wednesday.
Well, 1 year we had, it was the first year that the event was held in DC, and we got a house in DC and had, we got an Airbnb. We had like a 4 or 5 bedroom Airbnb in DC. I mean, it's cheaper than, getting hotel rooms for a bunch of people. And we saved probably a couple $1,000.
Yeah, sharing Airbnb. Absolutely.
So we had Casa House. It was great. So one of these days, I'll write you a sick note to your boss, and you can come to DC.
Yes.
and we'll have fun.
I get to come to the Casa House?
Yeah, it'd be great.
Awesome. I'm going to invite everybody here too, by the way.
Yeah.
If you're here viewing, you actually should. Thank you, one, for being here. You're now officially invited to Casa House too. I'm just going to show up with like 30 people, Alex. I hope you're ready for that. Everybody pick a spot on the floor. You can claim your own spot on the floor.
The only time I've taken a puff of a cigarette in the, what is it, 8 years now since I quit, was actually on the steps of the Cassaw House.
Oh, wow.
Or no, wait, maybe it was at the, it doesn't matter. It was in DC, and I think it was at one of the rallies. So one of our friends who went back to smoking because of losing access and dealing with the day-to-day life, let me have a puff off his cigarette. So,
was it awful?
It was. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, but it was just like, yeah, I don't really want this anymore. So
yeah. I know a lot of people, who've quit for years, and then they're like, yeah, I went out with my friends one night drinking, and my buddy who smokes let me take a puff off of his cigarette, and it was just a great reminder as to why I don't smoke anymore. Yeah, I've heard that story a number of times.
As for the, I did see a question, and we are, I think we can gradually, inelegantly move into the Q&A section here. But
Disco Potato, hello. Sorry.
But yeah, there was a question about GFN. I have not been invited to speak at GFN. I know that Julie has participated in GFN several times in the past, and there usually is at least one consumer representative there. So it's not me, but it's certainly somebody qualified to speak on behalf of the consumer experience. I just don't know at this time. So
yeah. Side note, it's also not me.
Yeah.
Just in case anybody was wondering.
So yeah, do we have any other questions we can get to?
Q&A time.
I will say, since we were talking about smoking and potentially triggers there, I've been researching stuff for our kind of official position statement on the menthol ban, and I smoked menthols for about half of my cigarette smoking, so about 10 years. And man, just reading about menthol, I keep having these fantasies of walking down to the gas station and buying a pack of Cools. So
Cools.
Yeah,
that's
my brand.
I smoked for about 12 years in total. The vast majority of that was Camel filters. Those were my cigarettes. Up until the last few years when I moved out here, I lived so close to a reservation that $20 cartons of Senecas were perfect, not great cigarettes, not compared to a Camel. I would still occasionally like grab a pack of Camels, and like treat myself to a pack of Camels, as terrible as that is. But there was like 2 years, my ex only smoked Newports. And so like occasionally if I ran out of cigarettes, that's how it started, right? Like if I ran out of cigarettes, I'd be like, hey, can I bum a smoke off you? And she'd be like, yeah, here's a Newport, and I'd be like, oh, this is terrible, whatever. But then they grew on me. And so for like 2 years of our relationship, all I smoked was Newports. And then like the day that me and her broke up, I bought a pack of Camels. And I was like that's it. This is the end of this. I'm done with this. I'm going back.
I have sort of a similar story. I was hanging out with a woman who I was very fond of and had a crush on. And
you put that so appropriately, and I applaud you for that.
And yeah, it was weird. Just as we hung out more, she smoked Salem's, and as we hung out and I was bumming cigarettes off of her, and I would want her to bum cigarettes off of me. I started buying Salem's, and then they changed the flavor, or they just went with like the lighter version of Salem's, and I switched to Cools. So
yeah,
and I did learn a little bit of history about menthol. So one of the interesting things is that I think one of the first menthol cigarettes was called Spud. Things were different in the 20s, so apparently that was an attractive name for a cigarette. And this was, I think, late 1920s was when menthol either became more popular or was sort of first used in flavoring cigarettes. And of course, Salem was another early brand of menthols. So yeah, it's menthol has been used in cigarettes for almost 100 years now. Wow. It is an additive. It doesn't occur naturally in
menthol is
curing or anything like that. Mint. What's that?
Menthol comes from mint. It doesn't come from tobacco in any way. So yeah, right. It would have to be added.
Yeah. So it is one of those things, and spoiler, the line, of course, is menthol has only ever been used to get more people to start smoking. That's it. That's the only reason that menthol is in cigarettes. It is to appeal to a broad swath of people who would prefer menthol over normal cigarettes. So the argument, of course, is that it is an avoidable additive, and it can be, you just don't have to put it in there. But of course, there are all of the consequences that come along with heavy-handed coercive interventions like banning a particular flavor, and we have to do that kind of risk reward where is it worth increasing the likelihood of getting people into the criminal justice system, perhaps having summary judgments play out on the sidewalk? Is it worth all of that to maybe inspire 20% of people to try to quit smoking? We believe the answer is no, and so
especially when the alternatives for people that are promoted to them are the same alternatives that have been promoted to them, the same cessation products that have been promoted to them for the past 40, 50 years now, that we already know the dismal success rates for. We already know what people go through to quit smoking. And while we're simultaneously banning other alternatives that have higher success rates, we're not promoting those products to people. It seems like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, and it's they're proposing this menthol ban as if there isn't that, as if this other alternative doesn't exist.
Right.
And of course there is an alternative that's been on the market for longer than cigarettes that does serve as a safer alternative to smoking, and that's smokeless tobacco products. I mean, even chew, which I don't recommend because you can get a safer oral tobacco experience with American moist snuff, and of course Swedish snus. So yeah, taking away access to vapor products and other new nicotine products is not necessary and doesn't make sense when you're going to be banning a flavor that is popular with a lot of people. There are millions of people who smoke menthol cigarettes, and they should, in order to make any kind of phasing out of menthol, that's kind of where I land. I don't know how you achieve that as a tobacco company and still keep your investors happy. But if there was any way forward through this, I think it's allowing the alternative product to compete head to head with cigarettes, and just make it so that tobacco companies have to make that decision because they're not selling menthols anymore. Yeah. People can buy menthol e-liquid and enjoy that, and they probably will if we just get out of the way. So. Right.
I don't really know if menthol adds any level of additional harm compared to non-menthol cigarettes. I don't believe it does in any way, and if it does, I'm sure that it's so minute that it's insignificant. That's just my assumption. I don't know. Just knowing what I know about smoking, though, if we're not going to promote any kind of safer alternative or successful safer alternatives for people to switch to, then the majority of people who smoke menthols, the majority of them are just going to switch to non-menthols. We're not helping them at all. We're not bettering their health. We're not bettering their situation. They're just going to switch. So I don't know. I take a pretty hard stance. Me personally, not speaking for Casal, I take a pretty hard stance against prohibition of any substances, and the only way that I could soften my take on any of it is if we were actively promoting menthol vapor products or menthol alternatives for people to switch to, but we're not. We're just like, oh, we're just going to ban this, go try your gum again. Yeah,
I know I missed a couple of questions, but I'll jump in on what Kristen said about anybody who says, or what Nick has said here. Anyone who says menthols makes smoking taste better and less harsh has never smoked a menthol cigarette. I totally agree. And they're part of the motivation for me buying menthols at some point was because I didn't really have to worry about people asking me for a cigarette because nobody wanted to smoke them. Even like I used to, when I traveled for work and would have to stop at 30th Street Station in Philly, I'd always step out for a cigarette, and it never failed. I would always get someone that would walk up to me and offer 50 cents for a cigarette or a quarter or something like that. And every now and then I would pull out a pack of menthols and they'd say, no, forget it.
Yeah, it's not even worth it. Like, I will carry on with my nicotine withdrawal to avoid your menthol cigarette.
But I'd counter to my experience and Nick's comment, menthol has always been used as a way to soften or mask the sting of nicotine and the harsh flavors that come from combusting tobacco. And for a while,
a cooling effect.
It does have that cooling effect. It has almost an anesthetic effect. And for a while, consumers perceived mentholated cigarettes as safer. And so the really wild thing about this, of course, I think everybody has heard, when people talk about Newports in particular, they say that, part of the reason why the menthol does what it does is because there's fiberglass in the filter or something like that.
I was always told it was in the paper.
Wherever it is, the urban legend is that when you inhale off of that cigarette, you're inhaling fiberglass fibers and doing all this. Even with that urban legend that many people believe, I believe Newport is the best-selling menthol cigarette at least in the United States.
I don't know the numbers, but I would assume so. What was always told to me about the fiberglass thing was, at least with Newports, that's what I was always told. Newport paper, the rings on Newport paper are made out of fiberglass, and then when you smoke them, those little bits of fiberglass cut your esophagus open so the nicotine can get into your bloodstream faster. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, please explain to me how much faster it's going to get into my bloodstream when I'm already literally inhaling it into my lungs. Like,
so all of these facts and more, I'm actually getting partly from this book.
I don't have Ashes to Ashes, but I've been told I need that one.
Ashes, this is it's a phone book, but it's a good book, and I've just been recently using it as a reference for some of these things. And so
did you want a phone book?
Okay, well then
that's a phone book, bro.
Yeah, that's a phone book. But I highly recommend this for folks. This is a comprehensive history of the cigarette in, I don't know about the world, but certainly in the United States, the early history of R.J. Reynolds and Philip Morris and other tobacco companies that didn't quite make it or got bought up. A lot of talk about all the competition and pricing and taxation and of course all of the policies that come around, and some really good information about menthol in here, which is factored into what I've been writing. So strongly recommend that. I know there were a couple other questions that kind of floated by, and I don't know if we wanted to go back and address those.
Oh, let's see. Let's see what we got here. Addie Tooney says, question, it was great having Kristen O'Marsh on with you lugs. Will she be back? I sure hope so.
Yeah, Kristen will be back. I think today was some special circumstances. So, but yes, Kristen will be back. And of course, she's participating by commenting in the chat.
She is technically here with us.
Yeah. She's the one that put your question up on the screen. So.
Actually, I think I did that one that time. I'll take credit.
Whatever. Thank you, Kristen.
Yes, thank you, Kristen. I don't know if this is.
So yeah,
this isn't really a question, I guess. Is Blackberry brandy geared to hook kids on booze? What was the ready-made screwdriver drink that was cheap and nasty in the 70s and 80s? I don't even see it on Google now. I have. That's way before my time.
Yeah, I didn't know.
No, I don't. I thoroughly don't believe that Blackberry brandy is geared to hook kids on booze. I think it's probably for adults that enjoy Blackberry and brandy.
I do know. Now, there was a marketing campaign, I think maybe 2 years ago. Smirnoff had they have their fruity seltzer thing or whatever everybody's going crazy for these days. and it was sort of like this backyard garden party. I mean, it could have been a Target commercial, but everybody's dressed in clean, bright clothes. They're all in their 20s and hip and having fun. It's the best days of their lives. If that ad had been used for vapor products,
oh God,
holy hell, man, that's all that we would have heard about. So,
yeah, you know, and even if there was some backlash, you're talking about the alcohol industry. You want to talk about lobbying funds and funding to counter things and claims and lawsuits and all sorts of things. There's some money there.
Sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
Breestones has a question. Has anyone heard any more about the Bloomberg/Philippines FDA monetary funding situation? I have not. Alex, you got it?
I feel like there's been a little bit of an update, but I don't have it. I know that now I'm drawing a blank on his name too. Mark, the gentleman that wrote about it for the philanthropy publication. Mark Gunther. There we go. I think he's followed up with one or two more articles in other outlets. So this is an ongoing thing. I don't have anything to add right now, but certainly more pressure and discussion about it, I'm sure.
All right. Well, I think that's it for questions out of chat. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about today before we?
Well, I guess we didn't get any questions about it, but the PMTA list is up on FDA's site. I haven't sifted through it, but as I'm sure many people have heard, there are millions of products on this list.
Over 6 million?
Yep. So yeah, we're a long way away.
How many was FDA expecting?
Applications. 5 applications.
Originally 5?
That's what FDA estimated they would get in the first year. We are a long way away from that.
Yeah, they were off just a little.
Just a bit. So yeah, this is something that the FDA promised. I think it's been more than a year. It could be longer. That they promised to publish this list. This is something that, state regulators, anybody really can use and check to see whether or not an application has been accepted for review. This is that important thing that we keep talking about. This is part of the rule. Anything that's on that list is, I don't know if they give an indication as to whether or not the application is moved to review or not, but if it has anything on that list, the FDA isn't going to pull off the market, at least until September of this year. Yeah. And this is another weird thing that I haven't quite wrapped my head around. The vaping industry had that September 9th deadline in 2020. Yep. So if you submitted your application by the deadline and FDA accepted it, you don't get a full year. You get until September of 2021. Which is weird to me, and I'm not even sure I'm talking about this accurately. It has always been my understanding, based on the law, that when your application is submitted and accepted for substantive review, from that point forward, you have that year to continue marketing your products. Apparently, it's different for vaping, just like everything else. So,
right, my understanding is that even if they just accepted it tomorrow, that 1 year grace period is September 2020 to September 2021.
Right. And that
was my understanding.
That is,
and I went back and forth with this a little bit early on in this kind of going on. We had Jim McDonald, who's also on our board for CASA. Thank you for all you do, Jim. He was on another panel that I was on doing a show, and we brought him on to try and clarify that. And that was Jim's understanding, at least at the time, as well as mine, that even if they accepted it, after September 9th, as long as you had submitted it by September 9th, 2020, then whenever they had accepted it from then, you were, again, given till September 2021.
Yeah.
That's the 1 year. And then there was some confusion recently about that 1 year grace period or whatever because of late approve or acceptance things, and FDA had these kind of third party folks working with them that were making phone calls and telling people, yeah, you know, it's been accepted. You have a whole year. And this was like a few weeks ago. So people are thinking, oh, I have until, you know, April of 2022, which is not true. There was some real communication breakdown with the FDA and these people they hired on. But as far as my understanding goes, it is September 2021, as long as your PMTAs were submitted by September 2020 and accepted by the FDA.
And to answer the question from Ian Thomas, will those products that don't get authorization with 12 months be forced to withdraw their products? So there are going to be, there's a range of responses that people could get from FDA, and the next wave, the next big issue coming up here will be deficiency letters. So there are, again, probably millions of applications out there that were done by small businesses, and it is very likely to, it is reasonable to assume that they will have deficiencies. Remember, this industry was not built by tobacco company executives, not built by people who have decades of experience in the tobacco industry. This industry was built by people who quit smoking and decided to spread the good word. So there is no expectation on anybody in the industry that they have an intimate knowledge of navigating the approval process. And so it is very likely that we will see a wave of deficiency letters. But the deficiency letters are part of an ongoing process to make an application acceptable. And so FDA does have the discretion to allow for products to stay on the market up to a year. And they have signaled that they will do this on a case-by-case basis. So if you're a manufacturer who's gotten your application in, and you're playing by the rules and you know, not doing goofy things, and having that back and forth with FDA, your chances of having, you know, the FDA exercise their enforcement discretion and not demand that you take your products off the market, that's you're going to have a higher chance of continuing to go through the process. However, it is also reasonable to expect a vast majority of the products, the vast majority of manufacturers for a vast majority of the products, to get a nastygram from FDA after this September deadline, saying that the products have to be taken off the market. And FDA is already going through this. They are already sending out letters to companies that do not have applications in, and they are requesting the products be removed. So
yeah, I think, you know, I'd really love to bring on one day to kind of talk about that and talk about what a lot of these small businesses have gone through to get PMTAs in, would be either or both Amanda Wheeler and Char Owen. The organization's name is Vapor Manufacturers.
American Vapor Manufacturers.
I think that AVM, I believe. I
That's
really hope that's right. But I know that they had a huge process where they worked with a lot of small businesses to get PMTAs to a point where they could submit them, even though they were not complete PMTAs. The cost of the testing that needed to be done, a lot of that, the submissions were done in the middle of our pandemic that, you know, we're going through. And so labs didn't have access to labs, things like this. There's a lot going on, a lot involved. So yeah, I'm sure a lot of those applications are going to receive deficiency letters because they're incomplete PMTAs. Yeah, I would love to have either of those two fantastic human beings on the show to kind of talk about, you know, that process and like how they worked with manufacturers and what they're expecting, and what their kind of game plan is or recourse is when these things come out. So
yeah, that's a good
Amanda
idea.
or Shar, if you're watching, or if anybody happens to pass by them in passing, be like, hey, the folks over at CASA would love to have you on the show.
Well, I can drop Amanda a note, so we'll see if we can get either of them on the show. I think you're right; that would be good.
I think that would be awesome.
As to Mogli Vapes question, how long will manufacturers have to pull their products when the FDA rubber stamps them? No, I think it's the standard nastygram from FDA. You get a warning letter. You've got 15 days to respond, and it kind of goes from there. If you don't respond, the messages from FDA increase in severity, including fines. And so, of course, if you're responding to a letter asking why your your product is being sold and there's no application for it, I can't imagine that response will be anything other than I have to remove the products, or we're taking steps to remove the products, something along those lines.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of like it's 15 days, I guess, unless you've got a good response to FDA that they're going to allow you to keep your products on the market.
Yeah. All right. I think that's going to do it. Just for all of the podcast listeners out there, if you would like to hear and see this entire show today, please check out the replays available on both Facebook and on YouTube. The links will be available in the SoundCloud description below this track. So head on over, check them out. This is a great conversation that Alex and I and chat had today. Thank you for everybody showing up and participating. Your questions are always welcome, and they always bring good conversations out. And I guess, I don't know, you got anything, any final thoughts for everybody out there today, Alex?
I'm sure I did at some point, but I don't right now. So
okay.
Other than that, thank you. Excellent questions from everybody, and look forward to seeing you guys every Saturday.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you guys, everybody, for tuning in. Join. I think we'll run through the little thing here at the end. Join CASA. If you have not already, please head over to CASA.org. Join. It is free. You can sign up for the newsletters. It's a great place, obviously, to get involved with everything going on early on in the show. Alex always takes the time to navigate the site with us, to go through calls to action and legislation. So you can sign up, join. It is completely free. You can also check out our blog every week that Kristen works very hard to put together. Also, if you are interested in rocking some awesome merch, I have a New York shirt that I absolutely love. You can check out the merch over on CASA as well. Pick up some sweet CASA swag. It definitely helps us out. And I guess, yeah, look at all that swag that Alex has up on the screen. Awesome.
I like this one.
Yes, absolutely. Weapons of mass disruption. I love it. The only one I gotta get some more CASA swag, man. I do. I have to get some more. All I have is my New York shirt, my I Vape I Vote New York shirt. But yeah, awesome. I guess that's gonna do it for us. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you guys for being here. Stay safe out there, everybody. Be excellent to each other. And Alex and I, and possibly Kristen or other guests. We'll see. We'll find out. We'll be here next week, same time, same channel, 4:30 Eastern, 1:30 Pacific. You got to figure it out in between. I get lost. And anywhere else around the world, you're on your own. But much love, everybody. Take care. We will see you guys next time.